The other part that I think is really important for people to realize, and I know this is semi-crazy to say this because we just watched the three greatest players that ever lived over the course of 19 years old, standing in front of a room full of cameras, microphones, and journalists who all know exactly what question is coming. The kind of moment that has broken far more experienced athletes. And she just sat there, completely still, and said 15 words that stopped the entire tennis world cold. That is where we are starting today, because what happened in Austria this week was not just a viral moment. It was a statement, a declaration from a young woman who has spent years being underestimated, overlooked, and now openly attacked by one of the most famous voices in the history of the sport, and who responded to all of it with the kind of quiet, devastating confidence that you simply cannot fake. Let me take you through everything, because the full story here is so much richer than the clip you may have already seen floating around on your feed. The Upper Austria Ladies Linz tournament is not some small warm-up event. It is a 500-level WTA tournament, one of the more prestigious stops on the European clay calendar, and this year it was celebrating its 35th anniversary. The organizers had gone all out, completely transforming a design center in the heart of the city, a building that does not normally host tennis at all, into a stunning indoor clay arena. They spent 5 full days constructing those courts from scratch, and the result was something genuinely beautiful. Fast, demanding clay that punishes hesitation and rewards players who have put in the real work. The kind of surface that tells you everything you need to know about a player within the first 3 games. Alex walked into that environment and looked completely at home. She had been working on her clay game at the Rafa Nadal Academy, grinding on footwork and movement and the specific art of sliding into ground strokes with confidence and control. When she spoke to the press before her opening match, there was this visible excitement about her. Not nervousness, not performance, just genuine hunger. She talked about embracing the challenge of clay at this level, about the work she had been putting in behind the scenes, about how much she wanted to show what she had been building. And then she went out against Julia Grabher, and she showed exactly that. Grabher is a serious professional. She knows clay. She knows how to construct long points, how to move opponents around and grind them down, how to use the surface to neutralize pace. She came in with a real game plan, but Alex came in with weapons. Her forehand was loaded with heavy topspin, the kind that lands deep and kicks high and forces opponents to scramble backwards out of their comfort zone. Her serve, which has developed into something genuinely dangerous over the past several months, was picking corners with a consistency that made it look almost easy. And her movement, the part of her game that critics have historically pointed to as a question mark, was sharp and deliberate. She was sliding, recovering, staying aggressive, never giving Grabher a moment of breathing room. The crowd inside that converted design center was electric throughout. You have to understand that Alex does not just bring fans to tournaments. She brings an entire atmosphere with her. Filipino flags waving in the stands, banners and signs, people who had traveled across continents just to be in the same building as the person they call their national treasure. Every winner she struck drew a roar that felt 3 times bigger than the venue could reasonably contain. And she absorbed every single decibel of it and turned it into fuel. She won convincingly. She walked off with her fist raised, pointed to the crowd, blew a kiss to her supporters, and looked every bit the elite player she is clearly becoming. It should have been a pure celebration. A teenage girl from the Philippines, representing a country that has never produced a professional tennis player at her level, quietly and powerfully announcing herself as a real force at a serious European clay event. A story about sacrifice and distance from home and relentless belief in a dream that most people thought was too large. Instead, something else happened. Because John McEnroe had apparently been watching, and he decided to talk. Now, McEnroe's reputation needs no introduction. 7 Grand Slam titles. The playing career defined by genius and volatility in equal measure. A commentary career built on the idea that unfiltered honesty is a form of respect for the sport. Sometimes that approach produces real insight. Sometimes it produces moments like this one. What he said, and the substance of it has been widely discussed and confirmed across multiple outlets, was a direct and pointed questioning of everything surrounding Alex's rising profile. He suggested the excitement around her was being driven more by clever marketing and a passionate fan base than by any genuine Grand Slam level credentials. He raised doubts about her physicality, about whether her body and her engine were built for sustained competition at the highest level. And then he went after something harder to quantify but far more damaging in the way sports commentary works. He questioned her killer instinct. That word, that phrase, it gets thrown at young players, usually young players from places outside the traditional tennis powers, as a way of saying that no matter how hard you work, no matter what you achieve, there is something essential inside you that is simply missing. It is the kind of criticism that cannot be argued against with statistics or match results, because it lives entirely in the realm of feeling and perception. It is dismissal dressed up as expertise. The tennis community reacted almost immediately. Social media lit up. Fans in the Philippines and across Asia were furious. The hashtag Defending Alex was trending across multiple platforms within the hour. Former players, journalists, and commentators were weighing in, many of them appalled at the targeting of a 19-year-old who was in the middle of the most successful clay week of her professional career. But here is the thing about that particular type of criticism. The only real answer to it is not a counterargument. It is a moment, and Alex gave them one. She walked into that press conference, and the energy in room was something everyone present seemed to feel immediately. There is a particular kind of silence that falls when everyone knows a significant question is coming and no one knows exactly how it will land. She sat down. She answered the straightforward questions about the match thoughtfully, talked about her game plan, praised the tournament, thanked her supporters. And then a journalist asked her directly about McEnroe's comments. The room went quiet. 2 seconds of silence that somehow felt much longer. She did not look away. She did not reach for her water bottle or take a dramatic pause to collect herself. She leaned forward slightly, held the gaze of the reporter, and said calmly and clearly, "I play for my country and my fans, not for the approval of past legends." 15 words. That is the whole thing. And those 15 words did more damage to the argument against her than any ranking climb or tournament victory could have managed on its own. There were no insults in those words. No anger, no visible frustration, no attempt to score points or go viral. Just an absolute clarity about her purpose, about who she is playing for and what gets her out of bed every morning to go through the brutal physical and mental demands of professional tennis at the highest level. She was not interested in McEnroe's validation. She never was. She has millions of people at home watching her every match, crying when she wins, drawing something real and personal from her journey. Those are the people she is accountable to, and no level of skepticism from a man whose playing days ended before she was born was going to touch that foundation. The clip moved across the internet with remarkable speed. Within hours, it had been watched millions of times. Athletes from completely different sports were sharing it. Celebrities were commenting. People who had never watched a single WTA match in their lives were suddenly paying attention to this 19-year-old from the Philippines and what she had just said and how she had said it. Because there is something almost impossible to look away from when a young person faces a powerful critic and responds not with heat, but with stillness. It is one of the rarest things in sports. Most athletes in that position either retreat into safe diplomatic language that says nothing, or they overcorrect into an emotional reaction that ends up becoming the story instead of the original attack. Alex found something in between that almost no one finds on the first try. She was dignified without being passive. She was fierce without being aggressive. She was completely and unmistakably herself. To understand why this moment hit as hard as it did, you need to know a little more about the road she has already traveled to get here. She left the Philippines as a teenager, moved to Spain, committed herself to the Rafa Nadal Academy, which is not a comfortable or forgiving environment. It is one of the most demanding training setups in professional tennis, built on a philosophy of relentless work and zero shortcuts. She has spent years navigating the loneliness of being thousands of miles from home, carrying the weight of being a national symbol before she had even broken into the top 100 in the world, and operating under a level of scrutiny that most players at her stage of development never have to experience. She won the Junior Grand Slam at the US Open. She has been climbing the WTA rankings with methodical and determined consistency. Every step of her journey has happened in public, under a spotlight, with an enormous fan base watching and hoping and feeling every result personally. So, when someone sits in a television studio and tells the world that a player who has lived that specific life, that distance from home, that pressure, that grind, lacks killer instinct, The absurdity of that claim is difficult to overstate. It is also worth connecting this moment to something that happened earlier in the year at the Miami Open, because the two episodes illuminate the same truth about who Alex is becoming as a competitor. She was in a match against veteran Laura Siegemund, a player with experience, tactical intelligence, and every psychological tool available to a seasoned professional. At a crucial moment in the match, a dispute over time violations escalated into a vocal argument between Alex and the chair umpire. Siegemund was doing what experienced players do, using every available lever to put pressure on a younger opponent, to make the environment feel hostile and unstable. Alex stood her ground. She argued her case loudly and without apology and refused to be destabilized by seniority or reputation. At the time, some observers called it too emotional, suggested she let the moment get too large. Looking at it now from the other side of what just happened in Linz, it reads completely differently. That was not a crack in the armor. That was the armor being built, tested under real heat, holding together. The WTA has clearly been paying attention to everything happening around Alex, and tournament director Sandra Riel spoke with genuine enthusiasm about her presence in Linz, describing players like her as the future the sport needs. That is not just promotional language. The commercial and cultural reality of what Alex brings to every city she plays in is becoming impossible to ignore. The engagement she generates, the market she opens up, the demographic group she reaches, these are things that matter deeply to a sport that is always looking for ways to grow beyond its traditional base. The Philippines alone is a massive sports-hungry population that has historically had very little connection to professional tennis. Alex is that connection. The loyalty she has inspired in those fans is not manufactured. It cannot be bought. It has been earned through years of hard work that people have watched up close and felt personally. Brands already understand this. The commercial interest in Alex is accelerating fast, which makes the decision by established media figures to publicly minimize her not just unfair, but genuinely counterproductive to everything the sport is trying to build. Looking ahead in the draw, the potential matchups are genuinely exciting. Mira Andreeva, aggressive and technically sharp, would be a serious test of Alex's clay movement and her ability to trade heavy ground strokes under pressure. Badosa, one of the most naturally gifted clay players currently on tour, would present a completely different tactical challenge, one that would require her very best thinking and execution. And beyond Linz, the clay season continues, building toward the biggest red dirt events of the year. Every match now carries an extra layer of weight, not just in terms of rankings and results, but in terms of the story being written about her ceiling and her future. She has converted McEnroe's attack into something useful. That transformation, taking a public dismissal and channeling it into focused competitive energy rather than distraction or resentment, is itself one of the